Weird sciencey facts that boggle my mind. Don't be bugging when it gets lit, because you go a little crazy. Sorry, that was the best opener I could come up with for this one. Ever since man discovered fire, we've been drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Or so we thought, but as it turns out, moths aren't actually drawn to a flame at all. In fact, artificial light doesn't technically attract any bugs. Well, maybe lightning bugs, because their blinking butts is how they find their mates. But I'm sure you'd disagree if I told you that the insects that haunt the night aren't attracted to the light. After all, every time you leave an outside light on, it's swarming with bugs. And obviously, bug zappers work for a reason. And even I used to enjoy watching the tree frogs crawl up on my kitchen window at night to snack on the bugs that were seemingly attracted to the light. And since we've all seen them swarm lights, how could they not be attracted to them? Well, that's a good question, and one that was only recently answered this year. Because while man has had fire for as long as man has pretty much existed, and we've had artificial light for 150 years, the reason that insects seem to be drawn to it has never had a scientific explanation. Of course, there's lots of theories. Some people thought that bugs were trying to warm themselves, which, judging by the box elder bugs who live on the sunny side of my house all spring, that seemed like it could have been a realistic possibility. Some thought that the insects were flying towards the light because they thought that the light was the sky, which was actually getting a little warmer. And the most common myth was that insects used the moon to navigate, and they were confusing the light from your lamp for lunar illumination, which was also sort of close, but not quite. Well, none of these theories really answered all the questions at hand. They were some of the best guesses we've had for most of human history. But with the fancy high-tech cameras we have today, scientists decided that they wanted to use them to take another shot at shedding some light on this peculiar behavior of insect flight. You got a pun and a rhyme in that one. So what they did was they set up some artificial light, and they used these high-tech cameras and this fancy tracking modeling software. And with that, they were able to see exactly what the insects were doing and how they were behaving in the presence of an artificial light source. And what they found is that they're not actually trying to go towards it, they're trying to turn their back to it. It's not an uncommon behavior for nocturnal animals to turn their back to the light, because that helps them orient themselves for which way is up. The ground is dark, the moon and the stars are light, so you keep your back up towards the light and you're going to keep yourself upright. And that helps for not crashing and things. And that works great until you introduce a light bulb, because now suddenly they're trying to turn their back to that light source. But while the light in the sky doesn't really change in orientation to them as they move, the light bulb does. So as they fly, trying to keep their backs to the bulb, they end up going in a circle that gets tighter and tighter and tighter until they eventually end up running into the light source. It turns out the answers to why insects do this was really simple, and the theories we came up with to try to explain it were far more complex. However, not all insects do this. They observed a type of fruit fly and a type of hawk moth whose flight patterns seemed unaffected by the light. However, hawk moths are still frequently caught in light traps. This would suggest that insects have multiple forms of navigation beyond just visual, where they orient themselves with light. And hawk moths, being observed both getting caught in light traps and being unaffected by them, would suggest that some insects can suppress their visual orientation for navigation and rely on their other instincts. But most insects, like many pilots who have met their untimely demise, it's often difficult to trust your instruments instead of your eyes. And the fact that insects' interesting interactions with ill-placed illumination is infinitely less intricate than our interpretations that they found it enticing, and I know enticing starts with an E, don't come at me. Well, that is pretty mind-boggling.